evening. Welcome to this debate, information session. Wirt has always worked for a public decision and not a boardroom decision taken at Wirt when they face a project as big as this. So we welcome you, and I pass on the microphone to Daniel Chilia, who is going to coordinate this debate. Thank you very much.
I didn't hear what you said, but good evening. Thank you for coming. I'd like to explain a few things before we start. First of all, we decided to do it in English because there's a number of large number of our members are English speaking, and they have an interest in Gozo. In fact, most of our members as Wirt Ghawdex are foreigners. Unfortunately, it seems that they care about Gozo than most Gozodens, because you don't seem to be interested in being members of Wirt Ghawdex, which obviously is, I guess you know what Wirt Ghawdex does. I take this occasion to, we're giving out membership forms. You'd be helping us, but in reality you'll be helping yourselves, because you'll be helping Gozo through Wirt Ghawdex. I'd like to thank the Oratory of Don Bosco, Gonefe. Thank you for letting us use this hall. It's a beautiful setting. And I'd like to thank all the people along with me on the stage. And you have the names. We avoided going through explaining each one of them to save time, because I think this is going to be a long night. And the second part will be question time, and strictly question time. We're not here, I mean, the panel here is here to talk, whilst anybody who can ask to anything to the panel, but not to make speeches from the audience, please. The other thing is that we would like that politicians who are over here, we're very glad that they took the interest to be here with us, but today they sit and hear and don't take part in this debate. Since Wirt Ghawdex has decided to make this completely apolitical, maybe there will be another occasion later on to make another debate between the politicians to talk about this issue. One last thing, there's been a lot of misunderstandings about this debate. This is not about whether Wirt Ghawdex or whether we are in favor or against. We are here to learn what's happening. All of us, we are trying to understand what is going to happen to Gozo once the tunnel is made or is not made, and what are the other alternatives. And the last thing I'd like to say is that unfortunately Dr. Godfrey Baldacchino couldn't be with us tonight, but we recorded his intervention, which we will leave for this evening. Thank you very much. And we can start from Dr. Franco Mercia.
Hi. First of all, thank you for inviting me to actually participate in this discussion. I'm actually doing this presentation in 3 phases. First phase is to explain why we're here, why we got here, why we got this notion here. And second is to actually go through what we've been doing over the last 9 years, 10 years. And thirdly is to go over the mitigation issues, which I'm sure you're all are aware of. I was doing some research on the subject, and I came across this saying which really caught my eye. I'm just going to read it for you. Seeing it there, I think. Well, it's basically the unification of the national territory is a national issue, and it is highly patriotic of any Maltese to oppose what should be an eminently non-controversial cause. Future generations will cast shame and dishonor on those who will have done so. I hasten to add, this is not mine. I found this as part of the manifesto of the Society for the Union of the Maltese Islands back in the 1960s. by Kauki, and he's not related maybe you would think I'm related to him. He's not related at all. And he was very much pushing the project of Ecosoi. He also said that the unity at all levels is the most indispensable asset in such a small nation as Malta, where the collective effort of all the component parts of the country and every citizen should be challenged to the attainment of economic viability. Well, that attempt fell short, and then we found back in the early 70s, the beginning of the Labour time, they had actually a technical feasibility study was commissioned to a Japanese agency made up of 5 people, and they looked at the possibility of connection road. They basically said that it is possible, but then it was shelved because of the financial component. Since then, there were no real attempts, apart from today, obviously. I also looked through the opinion polls that we have available. They're available for all of you in the public domain. And these were all the ones that I found. And they all were positive in the sense that they all wanted the permanent link. So we go through them one by one. Vella did quite a big study, a questionnaire, and he found that 82% of Gotlanders are in favor, while 61% of Maltese are in favor. Malta today, 65% of Gotlanders are in favor. And again, the trend that we actually found ourselves with was that the younger you are, the higher the chance that you're in support of this project, and the older you are, the less chance that you're in support of this project. Then the GUG, the Gotland University Group, same, they actually said that 75% of the students were in favor. We also had a Malta Independent survey, 2017. This found 62%, 62.7% in favor, and 29 disagreed, and 7 were undecided. Since we were embarking on this project, we did our market research, because obviously whoever is going to take on this project would know what the field is all about, and so we did this market research back in October last year, and we found 85% of Maltese are in favor, 82% of Bosnians are in favor, and they actually, as you're seeing there, they actually read even 80%, 98% of Bosnians are actually in favor of paying the same price or even more to use the tunnel. And again, the younger you are, the more chance you are in favor of the tunnel. The social impact assessment was carried out back in 2016. It was updated recently by Mark Formosa, a geriatrician, actually gerontologist who's a professor at university. And he found that 82% are in favor of the tunnel. And basically highlighted the fact that people were saying that it would decrease their traveling time, and also they would be more in control of their traveling schedule, so they were very much in favor. So he actually came across with this concept of social tunneling, in the sense that he actually highlighted that the young Bosnians actually are settling in Malta, and what he basically highlighted 4 drains. First of all, you have the economic drain and the well-being drain. So workers and actually those who actually are being paid less, and also the fact that well-being was being affected in the sense that there are some people actually saying that they have a problem with the family, in the sense that in the morning they have to wake up early, they don't actually see their children in the morning, they actually never took their children to school. But these were small things, but actually the well-being of the individuals. And the economic and well-being drain were leading to the brain and skill drain. So people of high skills, they actually were settling in Malta, and that is leading to the demographic drain. If we look at the demographic, we know with statistics that Gozo is an aging population. The birth rate of the last decade has decreased in Gozo compared to Malta. The mortality rate, if you look at the mortality rate in Malta, it's much lower than in Gozo, so beware. You have a higher risk of dying in Gozo, unfortunately. And if you look at the number of school children, this from actually a PQ I did in my time, that between 2000 and 2014, the number of school children in Gozo has shrunken from actually 2,314 to 1,448. That means a 40% reduction over the last 14 years, compared to 23% reduction in Malta, because obviously the birth rate is decreasing everywhere. The issue is that Gozans are faced regularly, our youngsters are faced with deciding between career progression and family. You can't combine both. So you get a degree, you're sought after, you get a good job in Malta, and then it's very difficult to come back to Gozo. Because if you got to Gozo, you're going to be paid less, and then you have to forget your career progression, and you just have to lump it. And that's the reason why the demographic drain is even more significant. So I think we Gozans, the reason why we want this tunnel, or at least our section want this tunnel, is that we want equal opportunities in education, in health services, in employment. We have to have a level playing field with Malta. If you look at the foreign direct investment in Gozo, it was only 0.04% up to 2013. 0.04%. We're not second-class citizens. Okay, we should have the same opportunities as the Maltese, and a tunnel, a road to Malta would solve that, would begin to solve it. If you just look at the health service, which probably I'm more confident with, it's impossible that in Gozo you have health services the same as Malta. Just impossible. For logistical reasons, you can't have certain services because the population is what it is. And that's one of the reasons why we have all these health mishaps recently. Because if you have a heart attack, in Gozo you don't have the facility of actually doing a cardiac catheterization on the spot and doing a stent, which is what common practice in Malta. But in Gozo it's impossible. You have to get a helicopter and get to Malta and hope and pray. And this is something in other services as well. So in other specialized services, it's impossible. In Gozo, you're seen by a general surgeon, but you can't be seen by a specialist surgeon. I see John Patch jumping here because obviously he's a general surgeon, but nowadays in surgery you have people operating on gastroenterology, others on prostate, others urologists, others, pancreas, all the lot. It's all divided. It's not accepted in 2018, 19 that you actually are not being treated by super specialists as we do in Malta. So the project so far, I'm going to go briefly through this. We did a pre-feasibility study back in the previous administration, started off by Honourable Chris Side, by Mott MacDonald, and this actually highlighted that an immersed tunnel is not a good idea, but a bore tunnel would be feasible, but it needed more testing. Then we did a cost-benefit analysis, which was instigated by the Gozo Business Chamber, which were a promoter of the project, and this was taken over by the government and completed. And since then, Transport Malta have done lots of tests like seismic studies, bathymetric studies, all geological studies, 9 bores over the whole track. And also the EIA was initiated back in 2018. At the moment, we actually have the conceptual design in hand. It was done by COWI, a company based in Glasgow, which was advised to us by Professor Groff, who was the consultant from the beginning of the project back in 2011. So the EIA was roughly in this area. We actually did a micro-traffic simulation study model. You must have noticed the wires and the roads, which actually were counting the number of cars going across in different areas, up to Zeebrugge in Malta, and it goes up to Victoria. This is roughly where the portal is being proposed, but obviously it's not a final idea at all, because the conceptual design is just a concept, but it will have to be dealt further by whoever will be the contractor. And this would be the one in Gozo. As you see it, the take-up of the land is not enormous. The next stage, which we're about to publish the pre-qualification questionnaire, the PQQ. Obviously, I'm probably allergic to lawyers, so when I start meeting these people, I start worrying, because it's with negotiation and all the lot of litigation, etc. It's not easy, but the plan is to go for PQQ, then we go for the ITPD, and then the best and final offer in the end, which would take at least 2 years, at least. As regards to the mitigation issues, so I'm sure you will have lots of questions on these: the traffic, pollution, overdevelopment, Gozo losing its charm, toll, the issue of metro, and waste disposal. So traffic, you come to Gozo if you want to come to Gozo. That was suggested by an 18-year-old, and he's right. I mean, they're doing the fly pass to Marsa I don't have any intention to go to Marsa when they finish the Marsa junction, because I have no need to go there. I will go there if I need. And the same for Gozo. Doing a tunnel doesn't mean that you will go to Gozo, but you only need to go to Gozo if you need. And in Malta, there are quieter places than Gozo. If you go to Landry, if you go to Safi, they're quiet places. If you're looking for a quiet place, it has to be Gozo. If you do an efficient busway service, I don't know how efficient it would be, or metro, it will still increase the traffic. People still have to go get around. They can't just leave them in Victoria and walk. The tunnel, one has to pay to get through the tunnel, so there's some control, because obviously the price can be used to control the number of cars and the timing of cars. I mean, there are systems abroad, like in Israel, for example, a particular road that you actually, if you do use the highway, the fast lane, you actually pay more than if you use the other lane, the inside lane. So there are ways to actually control the traffic. As regards to traffic management goes, I think we need to think about parking places. We need to maybe think of congestion charge in Victoria, Blue Street parking, and maybe an alternative route to bypass Victoria. We already have traffic in Gozo, so I think it's not a bad idea to start thinking about these things. About pollution, if you look at the pollution that the ferries generate at the moment, it is 13 times more than if you calculate the number of cars actually crossing in a tunnel. It's 13 times more with the ferries. And if you think that in 10 years' time, there will be more electric cars or hydrogen-powered cars on solar charging points, the difference will be much bigger. If you think about overdevelopment, I think it's incorrect to mix overdevelopment with accessibility. I mean, I think in my opinion, we flew in Marsa 4 and Shandy, we don't have a tunnel. I don't think if you do a highway to Medina, you get a skyscraper in Medina. It's development policies. So if you want to control development, just do strict development policies and preserve the village cores. So I think Gozo, there are a lot of people saying Gozo loses charm. I think Gozo's losing the Gosden. If we lose the Gosden, we lose its main characteristic, because the Gosdens are leaving. Toll, this will be the first toll road for the Maltese Islands. I think there will be a regulator of some sort, so the legal aspect of it is being worked out. It will be electronic, so you don't have to stop to buy a ticket, you just go through. And traffic won't really be generated, because it's a normal road. And if you can't actually pay regularly, have a transducer, but you can actually, if you don't have that, you can actually pay when you go for your license. So it will be worked out like a CBA. The average weighted toll is being worked out, and obviously it's up to the concession length, which will allow what. So basically, the toll should be based on the frequency of whoever the user, and then obviously the PSO will head the Gosden side of whoever is using it more frequently. As regards to the metro, as you've seen in the paper recently, Gozo has to be in the region of 100 to 150,000 population for the metro to be feasible, and this is according to Eric, it's not according to me. The difference between doing a metro and a tunnel is astronomical, so we're talking about billions, and we know that our concept is around 400 million, sorry. Also, you can't have a metro going to leaving people in Mordine, so they have to be to Valletta at least. And also the inclination of the metro cannot be more than 2%. So the tunnel, the water tunnel will be 5%, so it's not possible to combine both. And combining both, you just bust the project. As regards to the waste, obviously it is an issue, it's a big issue, and in my opinion the best way is to do land reclamation project. And land reclamation is not that negative. I mean, Singapore has 22% of its surface area, land reclamation. And it actually be positive, because you can actually use it and not use the land you have. So, and in my opinion, Gozo's life tunnel is a life link. It's 4 opportunities, better head services, equal prosperity, reversal of the drains, and it's a game changer for us Gozans. And I think this is the closest we've ever been for fulfillment of this dream. Thank you.
Please, if possible, we'll try to keep to the time. We'll sleep here tonight.
So, thank you, Daniel. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is with pleasure that I, on behalf of the Gozo Business Chamber, accepted the invitation of Wirt to be with you this evening. I would like to thank Wirt for the invitation and for their initiative to hold this debate. The subject, the Gozo Malta Sub-Sea Tunnel, has been promoted by the Chamber for the last 10 years. But we started mentioning a permanent link between the islands of Gozo and Malta more than 20 years ago, the same time the Gozo Business Chamber was founded. In the end, we are doing nothing more than echoing what our forefathers have planned and wanted more than 50 years ago. Last Thursday, I was on the 6:45 boat from Gozo to Malta. It is one of the most populated trips, an everyday occurrence. Students and workers seated in every conceivable corner, sitting on the stairs, strewn on the floor, taking every space available. Anger took over me. To make a few steps, I had to pay attention not to step on someone. In a recollection flash, I remembered a particular trip of the 18th March 1994, exactly 25 years ago to the day. had to go to Malta in the afternoon. Can't remember why. Boarded the Calypso, and the trip began making its way to Samazon because of adverse weather. It was a harrowing experience. Tourists jam-packed like a can of sardines, all sitting up, being hit to and fro. Never thought we would arrive alive, but we did manage it after all. The next day, the feast of St. Joseph, I spent a couple of hours writing a long letter to Dr. Fene Kadami, the then Prime Minister of Malta, putting up the burden on his shoulders should Gozo have a repeat of that fateful 28 October 1948. Action was taken, and the plan for the new ships and the proper Chirkawa berthing space soon came rolling out. Remember, action needs to be taken. Time passed, and in May 1999, taking part in a POV conference in Gozo entitled Leveraging Private Enterprise, I advocated the setting up of a Gozo Malta Transport Authority that, apart from having Gozo Channel under its auspices, would take care of the ports and their facilities, take new initiatives to develop the communication between the two islands, and last but not least, indulge into discussion on a permanent link between the two islands. The debate on this particular project was started 10 years ago, and discussion has been going since then. One of the first public meetings was held in February 2011, 8 years ago, and in March 2011, in the publication of the Gozo Business Chamber I-Link, we stated that the question of a permanent link has now gathered irreversible momentum. Since January of the present year, and we are speaking of 2011, when the debate was brought up to the forefront on the national media, what had always been a dream in the mind of a number of people has become a possibility within the grasp of a people. A visit was conducted to Norway in April 2011, after which Eivind Groth, Chief Scientist and Professor of the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, was appointed as consultant to the Maltese government, and he is still acting in this function today. One interesting public meeting of that year was conducted by the same Professor Groth in June 2011 at the Grand Hotel, organized by the Chamber in conjunction with government. The audience on that day had the opportunity to ask all the questions they wanted about tunneling technology. I still have clear in my mind his assurance about the fact that during earthquakes, the safest place where one would be is in a tunnel. And also that tunnels can be built anywhere, albeit with various grades of difficulty. But tunnels can even be constructed in the sand. In the end, it resulted that there was general consensus of the Gozo constituted bodies, the Gozo Regional Council and the Church, who all backed the political responsibility assumed by government to study the matter further. The opposition also gave the thumbs up to the proposal, and the subsea tunnel appeared to be the preferred way to link the two islands. The result of this concerted effort was the report, Preliminary Analysis, Assessment of Road Tunneling Options between Malta and Gozo by Mott MacDonald in March 2012. The conclusion that was made by this report was that the review of the number of different types of undersea tunnels demonstrates in general terms that with regard to the overall length, depth and configuration and size of tunnels, an undersea tunnel link between Malta and Gozo would be feasible and does not exceed the capability of current technology. This information is all publicly available. A year later, in March 2013, there was the general election, in which both political parties promised that they will be working on a permanent link. Labour took government, and the tunnel project was shelved for a while. A bridge scenario was being envisaged, and the Malta-Gozo link feasibility study by China Communications Construction Company was published in April 2014. The project was estimated with a capex of 800 million. It took the Gozo Business Chamber some time to convince the present administration to consider the feasibility of a subsea tunnel, and that this project could be better than what was being proposed. In the initial meetings, we were met with skepticism, negativism, and perplexity, but with patience and dialogue, and I suppose with some internal help from Dr. Franco Mercia, we managed to convince. In the end, in February 2015, the Chamber took the initiative to commission Dr. Gordon Cordina to conduct a study on the economic and financial feasibility of alternative solutions towards providing connectivity between the island of Gozo and the main island of Malta. Transport Malta, in a short time, came on board, and in September 2015, the report was published. Establishing a permanent link between the island of Gozo and mainland Malta, an economic cost-benefit analysis of available strategic options, as the report was titled, studied three options. Option 1, business as usual, a baseline scenario. Option 2, project scenario, linking both islands by means of a bridge. Option 3, project scenario, linking both islands through the subsea bed tunnel scenario. The economic analysis presented in this report takes consideration of the following factors: effects on traffic flows, on economic activity in Gozo, effects on vehicle travel and waiting times, implications for the costs of fuels used, climate change and pollution effects. From an economic perspective, the tunnel results to be by far the preferred option, with a maximum capex of 300 million. This report was discussed internally in the Chamber, and then was presented to the Prime Minister and various other members of the Cabinet. It was also discussed with various stakeholders and also publicly presented. Copy of this report are available. Come the general election of June 2017, and both parties promised in their electoral manifestos that the tunnel would become a reality. Specifically, the Partito Laborista manifesto stated that over the past 4 years, a lot of work has occurred, and today we are in the most advanced position we have ever been on this project. A number of technical and scientific tests have occurred, both from foreign companies and the University of Malta and an Italian university. We are currently undergoing geological tests called investigative coring. The manifesto also reads that a social impact assessment had been undertaken and that the next stage is for an expression of interest to be issued. In February of last year, the Malta-Gozo Tunnel Steering Committee was set up, headed by Dr. Franco Mercia. In May 2018, Transport Malta published the project description statement, and the Environment and Resource Authority issued an environmental impact assessment and invited comments from constituted bodies, NGOs, and individuals. The Gozo Business Chamber made its contribution to both the statement and the EIA in August of last year. I am sure that most of the associations represented here made their own comments. We leveled criticism to some of the statements contained and made our own suggestions and proposals. Why have I taken the pain of going through this timeline? Because it appears that many have just woken up to the fact that the tunnel is just round the corner. We have spoken about this project for years in a convincing way, But a number of people, who I don't blame at all, have been thinking that this is just another electoral gimmick. And whilst we have criticized the steering committee for not divulging enough information, mostly about the geological findings, one cannot say that there is lack of information on the project itself. The discussion has been going on for more than 8 years. A number of studies have been published and debates have been conducted. Throwing into the equation a fully fledged metro system, when it is very well known that such a project is not within the short-term vision of the country, smells of a derailing of the tunnel project. Of course, a metro system is what is ideal for the country, but studies show that if it will arrive to Gozo, it will not be before another 30 years. Why do not these associations undertake a study on the metro as a solution for Gozo's immediate problems? If we just wait and see and continue discussing, Gozo is doomed. The situation of the present service being provided by Gozo Channel Company Limited, albeit performing to the very best of the actual capabilities with the vessels in hand, has reached saturation point. A call for a fourth vessel by all Gozo-based associations has been made, whilst the fast ferry service is direly needed. We are also in favour of reviving the helicopter service, and we reiterate our call for all these options to materialize sooner rather than later. But I repeat, we cannot stay just throwing proposals into a discussion. The present boats are nearing the end of their lifetime, and we are risking a complete meltdown of the service we have. In the May 2018 project objectives of Transport to Malta, it is highlighted that this infrastructural project will address the accessibility between Malta and Gozo, thus addressing the everyday problems being experienced by Gozitans to travel to their place of work. Whilst it is true that Gozitans are experiencing a myriad of problems to travel to their place of work, this is only just one of the problems of the Gozitan experience. It is the experience of the Gozitan student faced with the problem of unreachable rents. It is the sorry state of Gozitan businesses made to wait interminably with their drivers and trucks unable to load their vehicles because of the double ramp usage. It is the problem of the Gozitan traveller and tourist alike missing flights or leaving early on a 3 a.m. boat because of a 7:30 flight. It is the problem of Gozitan patients having to travel for tests or treatment. The list is endless. But above all, the project is not one that benefits Gozo and Gozitans alone. It is a project of national importance that benefits the two islands. The limited access has led to a duplication of public services, when in effect, a strategy of specialization would enable the services in Gozo to form part of a national network, serving the entire Maltese population. We are speaking here of medical services, educational services, law courts, and a number of other opportunities that can be created. The fact that the tunnel portals are inland, car traffic will be relieved from the roads, especially in the northern part of Malta. It would become easier for people to commute by public transport, as transport would go uninterruptedly from points in Malta to others in Gozo and vice versa. Saying that the tunnel will destroy Gozo's character is nothing short of a gross lie. Gozo is being destroyed now. What makes Gozo what it is? Its people, its inhabitants, more than anything else. And its people, its inhabitants, are now dwindling and vanishing at an alarming rate. We need youth to stay here. We need families that grow up their children here. This is what we need. Others say that Gozo's environment and natural beauty will be destroyed by the tunnel. Gozo's environment and natural beauty are being destroyed now. by scrupulous permits in ODZ areas and village cores all over the island, and the tunnel has nothing to do with this. Gozo is being destroyed now. To conclude, is the tunnel an answer to all Gozo's problems? It certainly is not. But can we stay anymore without this road in hand? Have we got the luxury to continue discussing without acting? Certainly not. Together with us, both Chris Side in the past and Franco Mercia presently have been bold and ambitious and managed to convince decision makers and takers from the whole political spectrum to take the steps needed to turn this dream into reality. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals call for decent work and economic growth, innovation, industry and infrastructure, and reduced inequality. The subsea tunnel between Gozo and Malta is essential for the country to fulfill all three. It will provide an affordable, additional and more efficient means of connectivity between the islands. It will expand the choice of travelling modes alongside, I'm nearly finished, just last paragraphs, along the development of services by sea and air. It will relieve the country and commuters from the costs and congestion associated with excessive pressure on any one means, including the need to reinvest in expensive transport equipment every 25 years or so. It is indeed a must to attract high-value-added business necessary to rejuvenate the Gozan population. I ask again, is the tunnel an answer to all Gozo's problems? No, certainly not. Alone it does not, but it is definitely the road that will lead Gozo into the future. The future with a plan for sustainable investments, which our chamber will suggest to the authorities. A plan that will give jobs in Gozo, a plan that will rejuvenate the island, a plan that will give a new life to the environment, a plan that will make Gozo the island where one would want to be. Carefully and wisely, we will use it as an additional essential tool to transform Gozo into a role model for island sustainable development, envied by the world over. A Chinese well-known proverb states, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So let us get going. And for our own and future generations, we need to take action now. Thank you.
One comment. Dr. Cassola, we spoke. I explained myself that both Dr. Mechia and Dr. Atsupardi are not at the moment going out for any election. Now, if they change their mind, it's not my fault, but I talked with both of them and they assured me that they have no interest at the moment. Obviously, anybody at the stable can decide to go out for election tomorrow, but at least at the moment, am I correct? Both of you are not going out for votes. And that was what we decided, who goes in and who doesn't go out. I think it's correct. There's no need to post on Facebook and try to embarrass us. Because at the end of the day, I mean, well, your comment wasn't very nice. I mean, so... no, it's not the truth. No, he's not a politician anymore.
Good evening. Thank you, Ghawdex, for giving us the opportunity as Gozo Tourism Association to express our views on the permanent link. An all-year-round island tourist destination can only be saleable if there is a reliable, consistent, effective and cost-sensitive connectivity from and to the mainland. Much has been achieved with regards to the inter-islands connection during the past 3 decades. In fact, we can basically say that now we have a 24-hour ferry service with Gozo Channel today, Monday, will be operating not less than 56 trips between Malta and Gozo and vice versa. It is relevant to add that the substantial investments carried out on the inter-island connectivity must be looked upon both as social obligation with respect and duty towards those living on Gozo, as well as infrastructural investments upon a service that symbolizes the only highway between Malta and Gozo. Notwithstanding these improvements on the inter-island link, the touristic sector on Gozo is not as yet achieving the same growth which is being experienced by mainland Malta. Therefore, here lies the million-dollar question. Does the fact that Gozo lacks a permanent link with mainland Malta mean that it is also being deprived of the much-needed growth that would make the tourist industry on Gozo more sustainable? Is the absence of a permanent link hampering the much-needed foreign overnight stays on our unique island? Those who are not well versed in tourism will argue yet that yes, this is definitely the case. However, the majority of the visiting accommodation providers are more skeptical and there are varied opinion on a permanent link between mainland Malta and its sister island Gozo. This divergence of opinions used to prevail within the tourism sector itself, and the go-ahead signal given by government for the car tunnel has rekindled the ongoing debate about the pros and cons of a permanent link between the islands. Yet this public debate is based mostly on perceptions, as up to this day there are so many unanswered questions. Very often, the local media ask the silly and pathetic question that is floated so often if you are in favor or against the car tunnel. This is no way leading to a proper discussion or to form a learned opinion in order to take an objective position on the tunnel. The general public, especially the visitors and the visiting social and economic entities, need to be properly and objectively informed on the car tunnel. The Gozo Tourism Association is not naive, and internally have very often questioned the public documents published by government with regards to the car tunnel between Malta and Gozo. From the economic cost-benefit analysis issued in September 2015, it resulted that a car tunnel is the preferred option when compared to a bridge or no fixed link. It is an opinion which the Gozo Tourism Association does not agree with. In March 2017, social impact assessment was carried out and found that 82% of 401 residents interviewed are overwhelmingly in favor of car tunnel. Then in May 2018, a project description statement was issued stating, amongst others, that the tunnel will save the journey from Gozo to Malta and vice versa by 40 minutes. However, the project description statement does not state how much time the residents are going to save from Lombardine to Valletta. However, none of the three reports mentioned addressed a number of queries, which the Gozo Tourism Association has been asking and which we often hear with the competent authorities with no objective answers are forthcoming. The Gozo Tourism Association is very concerned that as yet no impact assessment study on Gozo tourism was carried out if the car tunnel is built. Bearing in mind that tourism in Gozo constitutes 50% of the Gozo gross domestic product, we feel responsibility towards the tourism sector which the association represents, as well as the residents in general, that an objective and an unbiased study is carried out. In the coming weeks, the Gozo Tourism Association will be embarking on an initiative to commission an impact assessment study on Gozo tourism, hopefully to address the following tourism sector's concerns. The Gozo Tourism Association is asking, how will the Gozo tourism composite and scenario change once a car tunnel is established? Is the visiting accommodation annual occupancy going to improve or otherwise once Gozo becomes an extension of Malta? Will the island of Gozo become a day trip destination once we have the car tunnel in operation. Will the Gawdex Island remain a distinct destination and continue offering a different product from Malta once both islands are physically connected? For these last 4 years, Gawdex has been and is still being promoted as a different destination from Malta, with a touristic offer which poses more value to the visitor's experience. Will Gawdex live to this present mission once the car tunnel is built? Apart from the direct questions related to tourism, the Gawdex Tourism Association is constantly asking other relevant questions that will affect us Gawdexans. Will the public service application presently in place, allowing us Gawdexans to pay a reduced fare on Gawdex Channel ferries, remain in force once the car tunnel is operational? This public service application was granted for the benefit of Gawdex residents, precisely because Gawdex was separated by sea from Malta. We also ask, how much is the toll charge going to be in order to cross through the car tunnel? These and other relevant questions remain unanswered in the frenzy to push forward the car tunnel project. The Gawdex Tourism Association believes that the car tunnel will only be patching up the real problems. The car tunnel might work in the short term, but it is not the real cure. If we Gawdexans want to find solutions to the problem, we have to ask the right questions. Why do so many Gawdexans have to go daily to Malta for work? What will make their quality of life better? The problem is not in commuting, but in the real reasons the Gawdexans commute. Gawdexans commute daily to Malta because of better quality, high-earning jobs on mainland, because the Gawdex General Hospital is no match to Mater Dei. And our university in Gawdex does not use the video conferencing facilities between Talgro and the Sharqiya campuses. Therefore, the solution to commuting daily are not found in the car tunnel. The solutions for commuting daily are in creating quality and productive jobs on Gawdex, giving the right incentives to potential investors in order to attract foreign direct investment on Gawdex. Equip the Gawdex General Hospital to meet the demand and achieve the standards of Mater Dei. Open up the university, open up more the Gawdex University campus for courses and utilize fully the existing connectivity for video conferencing between the campus in Malta and the one in Gawdex. Lay that blessed second fiber optic cable to ensure and safeguard IP connectivity. These are all part of the solutions of the daily commuting. These are the real things that will save time in commuting between Gawdex and Malta. All these solutions were discarded by successive administrations along the last 30 years. In this undefined scenario, the Gawdex Tourism Association heeded the views of several stakeholders, heard the opinion of its different members coming from the various tourism sectors, and discussed at length around the council table the car tunnel issue. We have come a long way to spell out the association's position, which does not reflect the opinion of one individual, but the belief of what's good for Gawdex from a wide range of Gawdex tourism establishments. Once the Gawdex Tourism Association became aware that government is adamant to carrying out the car tunnel project, we publicly expressed our position based on the views, opinions, and thoughts mentioned earlier. We believe that if another secret tunnel is going to be constructed just the same, this should cater for a mass underground transportation system and not for vehicles. Hence, incorporating an underground rail system that connects the center of Gozo to centers like Valletta, Mater Dei, University, Malta International Airport, and Slima. This way the residents will save time in commuting. This way we can offer a quicker transfer to the tourists to enjoy the Gozo characteristics. Through such a network, will our youngsters have dinner at home after the university lectures at Belgrade. The car tunnel will only populate Gozo with more cars, and there is no guarantee that the present crossing time will be reduced, especially if you are driving to Malta in the car tunnel behind the cargo truck. In tourism, we have a maxim which says Gozo does not need to copy Malta. Let us ensure that the tunnel does not become the Brexit of Gozo. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping the time.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sean Zambit, and I represent the Association for Gozo Employees working in Malta. After all, I want to begin with, I want to thank the organizers for giving the organization, my organization that I preside, the possibility to participate in this debate. Like all of you, Arjun is here because we have a common interest at heart. That is Gozo, the future of Gozo, and how we can make Gozo a better place to live in. It is through such open and constructive dialogues that the Gozo and civil society can come together to plan and discuss the future of Gozo as a prosperous island, an island of opportunity rather than an island of deficit. After all, what we plan and implement today will have a tremendous effect on the future of future generations. So, thumbs up for the organizers for this event. Many argue that the tunnel is being done for the workers, but one needs, or if not for the workers, to help the workers. But one needs to be a worker, working in Malta and experiences our hardships and challenges that we face every day, to be able to issue such a statement and to put forward this type of statement. Empathizing only with us workers is not enough. So, what is currently the situations we workers face every day? We workers spend almost 4 hours of traveling time daily. Most of the hardships that we face, apart from physical ones, having to wake up early in the morning to catch the 6 o'clock ferry, financial ones, having to pay for minibuses or to pay private cars to cross over to Malta, there is also time. All of these three are all related with traveling. Currently, we workers, those who use a minibus, we spend almost 1,300 euros every year to cross over to Malta. Those using their private car, they spend almost 1,950 euros a year to cross over to Malta to earn a living. The present situation is also that we have 3 ferries. On many occasions, these are reduced to 2 because the current ferries, they are old, and every now and then one of the ferries needs to go in for the maintenance. We have no parking facilities or limited parking facilities, either at Njar and in Chirkawa, and very limited traffic management plan. All this led many workers to believe that immediate change is possible. My question is change necessary? Of course, if we look at this scenario, even I, as president of the workers, I say yes, it is needed, and it is needed immediately. what we have in front of us on the table, there are four options. A car tunnel, as is being proposed, a metro, or a car and metro system. These three, as an association, we believe that they are game changers. But there is also a fourth solution that nobody or many of us are discarding. The possibility of having 4 modern ferries, a fast ferry service, a park and ride service, and an efficient traffic management plan in Imjar and in Chirgawa. Was option number 4, that is the 4 modern ferries and the fast ferry, together with the ancillary services of a park and ride and an efficient traffic management system, tried and tested? No. If we had the possibility to test these, then we would be in a position, in a much clearer position, to say that a permanent link today is 100% essential. But we can't say that because we haven't tried the fourth option. Another point, by the year 2025 and 2035, France, Norway and Denmark, they are following EU directives, that is, to reduce the amount or to ban the sales of conventional vehicles. So, within 7-8 years' time, the issue of the metro will also race back to the service, because it will be a new mass transportation means, the needed transportation means in order not to endure or to abide to EU laws. Another question is, and these are many of the questions that I haven't had any answer for them. The tunnel will take at least 10 years to be built. In the meantime, the government has committed himself that the 4th ferry that we will have the 4th ferry, a fast ferry service will be in place. Government is already having plans and issued tenders for the park and ride service. There will be also a better traffic management plan. What will happen if these 4, if this solution works well while the tunnel is built or when the tunnel is already built? What will be the solution? I have here people talking about brain drain. Brain drains, they do not get tackled because of permanent links. Brain drains get tackled effectively through quality jobs. If we in Ghawdex do not promote quality jobs, then the issue of brain drain will remain every day. Secondly, what are we looking after? Keeping people in Ghawdex, but that is not tackling brain drain. Brain drain is when you have workers, closeted workers, working on the island because there are enough jobs for them with the same conditions and with the same working conditions that there are in Malta, wages, etc. Another issue of time. I mentioned time as one of the main hardships that we as workers face. My option, not my option, but as an association, we take almost 20 minutes to cross over to Malta. From Chirgawa to Valletta, we also take about 50 minutes. It's because of the amount of traffic that we find in Pembroke, Haddad, Hamrun, St. Andrews, Imsida, and Floriana. With the tunnel as proposed, will this traffic vanish? If it will vanish, then for the worker it is a viable solution. If it will not vanish, then the worker will face the same problem of time as being faced today. Having to going to work, to hence my conclusion. My conclusion is it is not easy to have a stand with the current situation because inertia dominated the public opinion. But this shows that people are swaying for change because the current practice is not sufficient to cater for today's demands. But other possible scenarios can prove that the car tunnel, the exclusive car tunnel, might prove to not be the holistic solution we all want as residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was told I have only 10 minutes, so I squeezed what I wanted to say about 1 hour. I've almost strangled what I want to say. Anyway, I'll try, being disciplined, I'll try to obey this. Well, this tunnel project we are discussing is being presented as being urgent and as if it were the only and the best solution to improve travel between Malta and Gozo. It raises many questions and concerns that have to be seriously considered to determine if the tunnel is essential, necessary, just convenient, or undesirable. I will mention some of them, and I can only list them. I could talk quite a bit about each of these listed items that I want to talk about. Constructing and maintaining the tunnel carries obvious risks and involves huge expense, number one. The 13-kilometer tunnel would extend at least 3 kilometers inland within each island, possibly damaging water reserves, archaeological structures, and overlying existing or future buildings. Its excavation would produce about 1 million tons of material, the disposal of which on land or sea will create huge environmental problems. If used for land reclamation, as has been suggested, it would damage the coastal environment and threaten our diving tourism for a long time. The tunnel is planned to connect agricultural ODZ areas in Gozo and in Malta, with obvious environmental degradation. The tunnel's entrance and exit points demand the construction of new linking roads that would occupy and deface more valuable ODZ land. It is most likely also that fuel stations and vehicle maintenance buildings would be permitted en route to each opening to guard against vehicle immobilization within the tunnel due to fuel deficit or motor failure. These could eventually open the way to a creeping development. We know how things happen in this country. Motor vehicles in the tunnel using petrol or diesel create a health hazard through poisonous exhaust gas emissions in the enclosed space. The prolonged or repeated inhalation of such gases can cause respiratory problems, and in a tunnel of this length, proper ventilation is an important issue, and that may be an expensive item. The dark, damp, polluted tunnel demands from the national power grid a continuous and permanent supply of electrical energy for the obligatory requirements of illumination, ventilation, water suction, and road maintenance, amounting to an unrelenting drain on the national power supply and an onerous overhead expense, which expense would impinge badly on the toll that users are charged. An upward creeping toll for tunnel users will be surely charged. Will this be cheaper always than the ferry fare? As planned, the tunnel will be a single two-way road. No overtaking will be safely possible or allowed. But someone under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or claustrophobic effects, or sheer recklessness will take chances. Accidents will happen, and these will be far more serious than accidents in open ground. The limited access for ambulances and rescue vehicles would aggravate an emergency situation. Would 4 lanes be safer, or would they encourage risky overtaking? During rush hour times, equivalent to the ferry hold-up times objected to by tunnel proposers, the narrow two-way road in the tunnel would not safely allow average speeds of more than 40 or 50 kilometers an hour. And at this speed, cars would traverse the distance in about 18 to 20 minutes, which is very little less than the ferry travel time, which is 25 minutes. It's only 7 kilometers of sea that have to be crossed. The tunnel will be twice that length. Does the marginal gain justify the tunnel's existence? On exiting the tunnel, vehicles from Gozo would likely get stuck in Malta's notorious traffic jams, and any travel time they gain through using the tunnel would be neutralized. I anticipate the current queues at Injar and Chiricahua to board the ferry will be replaced by similar queues at the tunnel openings. So the tunnel would not correct the problem it is intended to solve, and it fails in its raison d'etre. How would the tunnel affect Gozo? Do we want Gozo like Malta? I'm sure most Gozans do not, nor would tourists. In the long run, it is bound to be harmful, and I will mention some deleterious changes that would be progressive and irreversible. The Malta-Gozo tunnel connection would remove the advantages inherent in Gozo's insularity and risk the loss of its profitable claim as a region in Europe and an independent diocese. The hotels and short rental accommodation businesses in Gozo would lose customers, because people from the mainland would use the tunnel for fleeting visits of one day or evening instead of actually renting for a few days. Restaurants might do better in this respect, unless the Maltese visitors bring sandwiches for the Gozo picnic, which they often do. Gozo's infrastructure will be overwhelmed through the tunnel, and its healthy and peaceful environment threatened, because the tunnel would entice hordes of visiting cars from Malta to easily invade Gozo, saturating the already existing road congestion, choking the limited parking facilities, increasing air pollution, causing noise pollution, not to mention the extensive littering. Worse still, encouraged by the tunnel facility, people from Malta may decide to settle in Gozo and invite a disastrous residential building stampede that would truly destroy Gozo's charm forever. Local residents will experience a deterioration in the quality of their previously good lifestyle. Tourism, Gozo's main industry, would be seriously impaired by the overcrowding and excess traffic the tunnel may bring to the island. From an idyllic, restful place, the island would lose its good image as a tourist resort and a settler's paradise. It will become more like Malta, Bujibba, and these places. Eventually, and typical of the local mindset, when the initial euphoria of the tunnel's inauguration fades with time, an anticlimax may happen, and people will begin to begrudge the tunnel toll charges and prefer to travel by boat. Back to square one. A critical issue is that if the tunnel is not used maximally at most times, it may not remain financially sustainable and will indeed need increasing government subsidies to survive, because its running expenses remain the same whether the tunnel is receiving tolls or not. It is reasonable to suppose that during spring and summer, tourists and others are likely to prefer traveling by boat rather than through the tunnel. At the national level, in the long term, the tunnel could become a national burden due to the unrelenting power and maintenance expenses. There is no doubt that the ferry service will continue, even if the tunnel is constructed. It is possible that the concurrent use of both tunnel and ferry services at the same time would not be sustainable, and they could bankrupt each other. I strongly believe that the tunnel mega project is certainly not a Ghawdex necessity, and much less a justifiable national endeavor, because it will not improve matters significantly. It will create more problems than it solves, and there are better alternatives. There is a far better, safer, significantly cheaper solution to the Gozo-Malta travelers' problems than the construction and use of an undersea tunnel. I think the following remedial measures should be provided. If there are queues for the ferry, have more ferry boats, and from Chilkerwa, more frequent trips combined with a better organized bus service, including a number of non-stop buses to dedicated special popular destinations. That will solve a lot of problems. I would also recommend new fast ferries from Imjar for greater speed to more destinations in Malta, like St. Paul's, Grand Harbour, Massachusetts Harbour, Saint-Maison. Also with dedicated linked buses to Mater Dei Hospital, the university and the airport. And thirdly, a mass transport system in Malta that is better organized and reliable than it is, in order to wean people from the addiction to car travel. Nearly finished. Conclusion now. With analytic reasoning, one would conclude that the underlying causes of the Gozo ferry's waiting time are the excessive number of motor vehicles in our roads, the inadequate traffic infrastructure nationwide, and the people's reluctance to use public transport. There are far too many cars in Malta and Gozo in relation to the island's size. Vehicles have become widely affordable and their importation is totally out of control. Malta is only 17 by 9 miles in size and Gozo 9 by 5. Almost everyone in these overpopulated, very small islands has a car or two. And this motor bonanza is now driving the country to construct flyovers, underpasses and also tunnels, even tunnels under the sea, just to travel along the short distances involved. A truly ludicrous situation. I have no doubt that the Gozo-Malta tunnel idea would not have been conceived if these intractable situations that I mentioned did not exist. Thank you.
Rani Mashawala is the Vice President of GOG. because the president was sick, unfortunately. So it's in your hand.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Wirt for inviting us to offer our views about the permanent link. By way of introducing myself, I am Renee Formosa from the Ghawdex University Group, most commonly known as GUG. Our main goal as a non-profit organization is to facilitate the transition of Ghawdex students from their native island to Malta in furtherance of their educative vocation. The average Ghawdex student is no stranger to the weekly, if not daily, struggles of having to commute back and forth from Ghawdex to attend lectures in Malta's educative institutions, given that no such institutions exist in Ghawdex. I am sure you are all acquainted with the idea of connectivity, an issue which our government has been attempting to tackle actively, especially these past few months, by engaging in talks regarding both short-term and long-term solutions. I believe that I speak on behalf of all Ghawdexans when I say that the biggest issue with the connectivity in its current state is the abysmal ferry waiting time, particularly on weekends. The most prominent short-term solution presented by the government and the organizations alike is that of the addition of the fourth ferry to the Ghawdex Channel fleet, which would add a good number of voyages to the 50 plus already being made daily. We also believe that to further solidify the crucial position of the Ghawdex Channel ferry line for the short term, all ships should be equipped with second floor ramp mechanisms, like the ones already actively in use on the Manata and Tapino vessels, which will increase the number of cars aboard per trip substantially. Although, ultimately, the addition of a fast ferry service would be optimal, a fourth ferry would be suitable for the time being. As for a solution to connectivity in the long term, there has been a great deal of speculation surrounding the proposed tunnel. Although it is being said that the majority of Ghawdexans are in favor of the tunnel, almost all of the students we have come in contact with believe that it will be detrimental to the peace and quiet Ghawdex enjoys today in the long run. It is important to note that students who commute daily have to leave their home at 5 a.m. to attend a lecture at 8 a.m. and they do not always make it in time. There is no exaggeration, but rather a very real problem which we are facing on a daily basis. Unless the proposed project will prioritize getting students from point A to point B in the least amount of time possible, it is simply not worth the development, given that this is the only quarrel we have with the current state of things, which we believe can be solved with far less expensive developments, such as an efficient ferry service and the re-implementation of the fast ferry. We are all for better connectivity for the sake of facilitating the commute for students from Ghawdex to Malta. But we simply do not want for Ghawdex, the island we know and love, as a quiet place to get away from the busy life we live in Malta, to become the same concrete jungle we're forced to live in to be able to have a proper education. It is for this reason that we would like to appeal for the government and all the relevant bodies that, apart from the social impact assessment, which was conducted 2 years ago in March of 2017, we would like to see an index research carried out on how we Ghawdexans can enjoy a better quality of life. If this costly development is not found to be suitable, we are sure with a much less than proposed, we can improve Ghawdex educational infrastructure, create projects and offer job opportunities for Ghawdexans, as well as providing suitable accommodations for students opting to study in Malta. The Ghawdex student is its most valuable asset, an asset which must be safeguarded and treated with the utmost dignity for the betterment of not only himself but the nation as a whole. Granted, the implementation of the tunnel or any other major project connecting the two islands directly will increase jobs in Ghawdex, but it is the general public's opinion that Gozo cannot withstand an industrial boom of that magnitude in such a short span of time. We believe there are numerous ways to increase jobs in Gozo without costing our precious island its unique serene environment. Besides the overwhelming industrialization Gozo would experience in terms of construction, the vehicular traffic would also become an unbearable phenomenon. One must also take into consideration how the tunnel will operate and if it will benefit the Gozo students at all. If it is going to be substantially more expensive than the ferry, as speculation has insinuated, will it be worthwhile for us to pay a ridiculous price to travel the same distance and shave off a few minutes compared to what a more efficient ferry service would offer? These are questions to be recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was kindly asked by Wirt to address you as part of this panel in discussing the tunnel project. I represent the 14 localities of Gozo in my capacity of President of the Gozo region. Incidentally, this very evening, Parliament is convened to continue discussing the local and regional government reform, which will see the Gozo Regional Committee elevated to a regional council and which reforms add more power and style to the Gozo region. A concrete step towards a fully-fledged regional government, which we feel from Gozo is a must. I would like to start by commending Ghawdex for organizing this discussion tonight. That said, let's get to the heart of the matter. The Gozo Regional Committee has discussed the permanent link between the sister islands since its very inception in 2011. And on the 27th of October 2012, publicly in a seminar entitled Gozo Regional Development, where it invited amongst others economist Dr. Ghawdex to also discuss the permanent link concept in a paper under the name Development Trends in Islands Across the European Union. Ghawdex has stated that data shows that a fixed link by itself does not necessarily strengthen an island, but the fixed link should be complemented by investment to make such island attractive to live in. This takes me to the first point I would like to point out. Fixed link or not, Gozo needs a separate investment program. We should not look at the tunnel project, given that it is the fixed link that we have presented to us, as the only issue that is hampering Gozo's regional development, whether sustainable or not. To mention but one pertinent point of ruin by the construction industry, we believe that it will happen, we are already witnessing it, whether there is a tunnel or not. And it is up to us, all of us, to ensure that our precious little island is safeguarded against the greed of the few whilst allowing for sustainable development to flourish. The tunnel, personally, will facilitate all kinds of investment, the sustainable and unsustainable kind, but to argue that the tunnel is the means that will make the Gozo vanish is also hard to stomach, while putting everything into perspective and on balance. You have all heard before the panelists argue pro and cons on the effects of the tunnel, and I do not need to repeat them again. Most of the arguments brought forward are those pro and cons of having a tunnel or not. They are not scaremongering tactics of why we need or don't need a tunnel, and I think most of them do need careful consideration. That said, during the last regional committee meeting of the 27th February 2019, the fixed link in the form of a tunnel was discussed even in view of me participating on this panel. Whilst the Gozo mayors all had their very own opinion, as can be evidenced in the minutes of the regional committee, we agreed that we need to arrive at a common position, trying to find the golden mean, the point of convergence, and that, I think, we did. The regional committee concluded, firstly, that the tunnel project is not only a regional project, that is a Gozo project but a national one. Such an investment is not to be considered as something to satisfy the whims of a few or more Gozans, but is to be considered as a national project as much as other national projects happening on our sister island Malta are for every resident on these islands. Secondly, given the present situation and the ever-growing challenges of mobility around the islands, the tunnel project, if it materializes, is to be part of a larger underground network that sees cities and villages in our republic eventually connected together. That being said, the Ghawdex Regional Committee does acknowledge that such an investment has to start from some point, and the Ghawdex Regional Committee believe the starting point should be the fixed link between the islands. Therefore, the Ghawdex Regional Committee believes that any tunnel project should be made providing for the eventual connection with a larger underground network throughout various points on the islands, whether this happens in the immediate, near or distant future. Thirdly, the Ghawdex Regional Committee does not object that the tunnel is there as a tunnel for private or commercial vehicles, given that what it was stated in our second point is respected and taken into account. We believe that if the Ghawdex tunnel is part of an eventual larger network, the Ghawdex Regional Committee believes it is not only justified but much needed for all of Malta. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this interesting, colorful and very important discussion on the yeah, I thought I would be having background music, but not in the time. As Mr. Patch has pointed out, we were supposed to have 10 minutes, but again, I mean, it's the same in Ghawdex and Malta, 10 minutes can mean 30 minutes, so I'm very much better positioned now. So, the aim of the tunnel, the aim of the discussion, as outlined, is to establish a strategy to address the accessibility between Malta and Ghawdex. Nothing wrong with that. I won't be surprised that there are 84% of residents in Ghawdex who are in favor of such better accessibility, no problem. The problem is when we are asked to decide on the method, on how this is going to be achieved. And the aims say that the strategy is to offer a reliable service and reduce average journey time. Through a 14-kilometer long tunnel beneath the sea level, stakeholders in Ghawdex are in favor. That's what we have been hearing. I have my doubts on it because I have spoken to quite a number of Ghawdexans, residents in Ghawdex, and 90 plus of them are not in favor of the tunnel, though they are in favor. Though they are in favor of a better accessibility between the two islands, which makes quite a big difference. And one of the aims is to remove traffic bottlenecks from Shamshia. Yes, there's nothing mentioned about the bottlenecks at Bujibba, Mosta, Bekekara, Imsida, Hamrun, Floriana. So all this project is just to make it easier, faster to cross the channel and avoid the bottlenecks from Shamshia. From Shamshia inwards, it is up to the drivers to decide for themselves. Now I have included this geological map of Malta. As you can see, there's quite a number of black lines across the island. Those are geological faults. And the geological faults are very active. I would say that if Etna in Sicily sneezes, it will reflect on the future tunnel which is being discussed here. One has also to take in consideration that the deepest level, sea bottom from the surface, is about 50 meters, and one then has to see the strata, and there is a very thick layer of blue clay. The tunnel has to go further below the blue clay. This Now, my comments and my remarks are all lifted from two reports which have been made. One is a preliminary analysis and the other one is a project description statement. These reports have been made by government. One of them is Mott MacDonald, an international company. So I have lifted all the remarks and all the comments from these official reports. There's nothing sentimental in my delivery. Nothing sentimental. Everything is technical and professional. Such a tunnel has to have two portals. One in Malta, and it is being proposed at Limbordin in Poales. And one in Nadu at Kenuna. These are the entrance and exits for traffic through the tunnel. Now, according to the Mott MacDonald report, and I'm quoting, these are going to have inevitable, extensive environmental impacts. This is not my thinking, although I agree with it, but it is lifted from one of the official reports. As you can see on the Malta side, there's quite an area of karst garrigue which serves to supply the water table in the area. And obviously the water table in the area complements the hydrological characteristics of the area, and in the valley there's quite a number of agricultural activities because there is water which is available all the year round. Similarly, on the Ghawdex side, this is also another large karst area which collects rainwater and feeds the water table. It has got a lot of hydrological importance, and this is tapped by farmers who work their fields. You can see that the valleys are both green on both sides. The entrance and exit of the tunnel is going to go through this water-sensitive catchment area, affecting all the hydrology on both sides. So one of these inevitable extensive environmental impacts is the water table, which obviously will have a negative impact on the hydrology of the area. Obviously, going through that side, there's a loss of biodiversity of flora and fauna, although most people do not regard it as something important, but it is as important as the air we breathe. Agriculture, soil uptake will also be great. It has not been quantified as yet, but it will affect the farming community on both sides of the tunnel. Air quality. Now the entrance, the portals will have extractor fans to input fresh air and expel the concentrated air, dust, and they are polluted by the exhaust of the amount of traffic going through. And these impacts, negative impacts, will be there before the work starts and after the project is completed. So there'll be an emissions of polluted air on both sides of the tunnel, which affects naturally the community which lives in the vicinity. Noise pollution. I haven't heard anything about noise pollution from the speakers here, but noise pollution of the amount of traffic going through and even during the construction of the tunnel will be, well, we have to pray for the inhabitants who live close to the project. Air and emissions which will be discharged through the portals will be composed of dirty air which could be contaminated by carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Again, I emphasize that I have lifted these from the official reports which were made to the government. Waste material is envisaged to be 1 million cubic meters. Now, as everybody knows, this volume, these cubic meters of material, won't be extracted in cube forms. But when you extract these, these are extracted in pieces, the volume becomes, according to the report, 4 times as much in volume. These have to be deposited somewhere. Imagine 1 million cubic meters of waste material. And where they are going to be deposited, it is fetched to reason that there be more loss of waste, more impact on the hydrology of the places where they are dumped. I have taken this photo again from the report of Wirt. This is a similar tunnel in Norway on which the local tunnel is envisaged to be planned. I would say that the estimated cost would be about 1 million euros plus. And that will include all year round maintenance, 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and according to one of the reports, the older report, it says that operation and financing are estimated to take 20 years. It is also emphasized that there will be a remote toll system, as highlighted by one of the previous speakers. Now the toll will be according to the capital outlay, to the capital cost. And according to McDonald's report, if the toll is not costly, it will be the end of the Gozo ferry service. It won't be viable anymore because all the cars will go through the tunnel. So the toll will have to be more expensive than the service being offered by the Gozo channel. Again, this is lifted from the report. Now, accidents occur naturally. If one hears the news every day, there are about 3 or 4 traffic accidents on the islands of Malta, on the islands. An average of 3 or 4 traffic accidents on the island. Some are light accidents, but some are fatal. Now, in relation to a study which I have not seen yet, and I am not sure whether it has been done, nonetheless, whether it has been thought of, driving to 14 kilometers, some may feel claustrophobic. Now, as Mr. Bach hinted, with the effect of drugs, with the effect of alcohol, and with the effect of driving in a claustrophobic environment, accidents are prone to happen. Imagine if a car catches fire in the middle of the tunnel, 17 kilometers from both ends. Imagine the drivers driving behind or in front. Imagine the emergency service, how they could be. Imagine all the panic. This has not yet been subjected to a safety impact assessment in the tunnel. Unfortunately, most of the arguments here are all related to commercial activities. We have to change the commercial measuring ruler to include commercial, social and ecological. If the commercial ruler tells us that it is good, it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole project holistically is good. Now, according to the project description statement, which is dated 2018, the following assessments are needed. Geological and geothermal detailed investigation. How can one agree with this tunnel before such important studies have been finalized? Seismic and geological investigation study by the University of Malta, which has been initiated, but as far as I am aware, and I'm subject to correction, it is not finalized. Feasibility studies, including cost-benefit analysis and cost-benefit analysis, don't include only the commercial aspect. One has also to see the cost society will bear and the ecological aspect of the country has to shoulder. Maritime analysis. Ghawdex Channel is renowned for marine movements and currents, not necessarily appearing on the surface, which in those circumstances, depending on geological and geotechnical details and seismic and geographical investigations, can have a great impact. Archaeological and historic heritage, some UNESCO sites on both ends of the tunnel and also on the benthic aspect of the same. Transport impact assessments. In one of the reports I have seen that in a couple of years there will be 10,000 cars crossing from Malta to Ghawdex. Now, the impact is not just in the tunnel. The impact is that there is such a flow, such a great flow of traffic on both ends that will this further contribute to the bottlenecks in Bujemba, Mostar, Kilkara, Msida and Floriana. And as we know, unfortunately, there is no transport management at all. If I'm not mistaken, I have heard one of the speakers before me say that the tunnel can be open for at particular times or to control the volume of traffic. If this is so, is such a project worth it financially? Environmental impact assessment as per EU directive, it is also spoken about as to be studied, but still there is no indication of this impact whatsoever. Health assessment. What health organization sets out processes and standards, even to tunnels? I haven't heard anything about it. I wonder if you have. Qualitative and participatory. I mean, it's not just saying that this is going to cost us X euros, we'll get the return from X tolls, and so it is feasible. Safety assessment. There's also also a European directive which speaks about security assessment. And all Mr. Page and even I have made a reference to it. Security assessment. Well, we know today that criminality is on top of the agenda all over the world. Safety assessment. Will the cars be screened to see that there is no security problems? And what if something occurs in the middle of the tunnel? Goodbye to the 40 minutes saved in crossing the channel. Now, legislation for environmental assessment in relation to road and tunnel infrastructure projects and the associated construction-related activities, including disposal of rock materials, is outlined below. 14 European directives related to such project. Some regard biodiversity, some regards to water framework directive, others related to marine strategy framework, directive on the assessment and managing of flood roads. Well, there's no point in reading. There are 14 European directives which we, as a European member, have to abide and have to make all these studies to ensure that the tunnel is safe. Furthermore, there is also legislation for an environmental assessment in relation to road and tunnel infrastructure, which is national, and there is about 16 legal instruments which are all related or which have got to be involved in the construction of the tunnel. Now, is the tunnel the only solution to achieve the intended aims? The idea is good to have a better connection, but it is definitely not sustainable. Society, the environment, and the commercial sector, as indicated also by previous speakers, all have to bear a heavy price. Is the tunnel environmental friendly? Definitely not. I have here, so that nobody will come out and say you didn't put any suggestions forward. The fast ferry service from Jar to Marshallock, it will be faster than somebody using the tunnel, going to Marshallock and back, and you're close to the airport. A fast ferry service to Valletta, you'll be close to Monterey, you'll be close to Parliament, you'll be close to the main city. A fast ferry service to Sida will also get you close to university. So this is immediate start. We don't have to wait 10 to 15 years until the tunnel is completed. It can start next week, next month. Less expensive. There's no billion dollars to spend on this, and more environmental friendly. Contribute to less traffic, avoid all traffic bottlenecks on the mainland, not just Chechnya, all the traffic. It contributes to less pollution, it contributes to less stress, it is safer, and it is faster. It can reach the first part of the mainland, even near airports. And that's all that I had to say with regards to this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words on what is being presented as a Gozo-Malta tunnel. I prefer saying Gozo-Malta tunnel because it seems that very often we are privileging Gosdens over Maltese in the decisions that are involved in deciding why and when and how to build this fixed link connection between the two main islands. even though, of course, it goes far beyond the thousands of Ghazetans who cross daily or weekly in order to work to Malta. The bridge, the tunnel, whatever it's going to be, will have serious implications about the development of the Maltese islands, be it in economic terms, tourism, but also in terms of residence patterns and cost of property. So it's a complex issue. One of the reasons why I think I have something to say about this, I'm a sociologist, I'm a social scientist at the University of Malta. I teach a course on island life. As part of this course, I teach about connectivities and mobilities involving islands. Moreover, I was privileged to edit a book called Bridging Islands and the Impact of Fixed Links back in 2010 date, when I was a scholar at the University of Prince Edward Island in Canada. First point, of course, is that a serious discussion is necessary. Just because our two main political parties happen to agree with a connection between Malta and Gozo does not mean that we should stifle or discourage discussion. This is a very serious project. It could be Malta's largest ever infrastructure project in its recent history, with serious implications, as I said, across the board: environmental, economic, social, political. And it deserves a very clear level-headed discussion involving people who understand what is going on, so experts in their respective fields, but also, of course, residents, travelers, tourists, people who have second homes, people who commute, and so on. They all have their take, both on what the situation is now on the ground, but also on the future. Remember, when you build something, you also build something for the future. So it's important to visualize and discuss how we think that Malta should develop, Gozo should develop, and how the tunnel would or would not impact on that vision of development. So we need to see the big picture, and in looking at the big picture, I also emphasize the need for a multimodal transport policy. Malta is a city-state. It is developing as a metropolitan area. We understand that in order for a metropolitan area to function, it must have not just efficient connectivities, but efficient types of connectivities. It is not enough to put all your eggs in one basket, and in this case, the obvious basket is the automobile. Automobility is so far the dominant form of transport in the Maltese Islands. It has been probably for the last 50, 60 years, ever since the tram was discontinued, and public and private transport became the order of the day in our country. However, that does not mean that we should exclude alternative or complementary forms of mobility. We know that we have a public transport system. We also know that there are people being encouraged to consider bicycles, to consider walking. We also know that there is a possibility of a helicopter connection, for example, between Malta and Gozo. We also know that government has already indicated its willingness to subsidize public transport, should that transport be using the eventual Malta-Gozo tunnel or Gozo-Malta tunnel. So there are already discussions premised on the fact that we need to consider alternatives to the automobile. And there are other alternatives that a tunnel could help us discuss. A tunnel works both ways. This is important. It's not just a tunnel connecting Gozo to Malta, it's a tunnel connecting Malta to Gozo. As such, a tunnel can do many different things. And one of the things I'd like to emphasize is that a tunnel can itself be multimodal. My slide shows an impression of what is the world's longest undersea tunnel. It is the tunnel connecting the island of Britain to the continent of Europe. It is a tunnel that doesn't just encourage passengers to board trains, but it also has trains that ferry cars. In other words, this is a tunnel that also helps to transport vehicles and not just individuals from Britain to France and the other way around. This is important, just to remind ourselves that we can have a tunnel that serves multiple purposes. Also keep in mind that with a tunnel, places become closer. Once a place becomes closer, people are more likely to visit that place, but they also do so in ways that mean that they spend less time in that place. Shorter commutes, yes, typically means more travelers. We can expect an increase of travel, of mobility to and from Malta because of a fixed link, but at the same time it also means that people spend less time visiting the other place, given that they can visit more often and presumably more cheaply. This has implications on tourism, this has implications on the property markets. So these again are part of the bigger picture that we need to consider in the context of a Gozo-Malta connection. One of the things we learned recently as well, and this is a function of the fact that the seabed between Malta and Gozo is what it is, so a bridge is probably impractical from a civil engineering point of view. This therefore leads us to the option of the tunnel. However, a tunnel needs to have approaches, a tunnel needs to have a certain type of gradation, which is also determined by health and safety issues. In other words, in order for a tunnel to be built sustainably, with minimal risk between the two islands, then this tunnel has to start way back in Malta and has to proceed way into Gozo. As you know, the current plans envisage a situation where a tunnel would start somewhere in the Poales Imbordin area of Malta, close to Manicata, and end up on the slopes just below Nadur. That means that there is more tunnel under land than under sea. It may sound a little bit ironic that a tunnel connecting two islands will be passing under more land than under sea. But I see this also as an opportunity, just to remind ourselves that with a tunnel running from Nadur to Imbordin, the Gozitans will already be halfway to the international airport at Lua. The distance between Imbordin and Lua is almost exactly the same. It's about 15 kilometers. It's almost the same distance it's almost the same as the distance between Imbordin and Nadur. And this, of course, leads me to think, therefore, whether it is appropriate to consider that since we are taking all this trouble to build a tunnel, 2/3 of which practically is under land rather than under sea, then we might as well consider, roll the whole hog and consider whether this could be seen as part of a general infrastructure project in Malta, which would see the introduction of a different kind of transport. And here I mean a rapid rail, or a monorail, or a train, or an underground kind of system, which could take passengers, but as I said, keeping the Channel Tunnel in mind, it could also take vehicles. And this would be part of a national network. In other words, this is not just a project that is meant primarily for Gozitan commuters. This is a project for the whole country. It is a project that allows us to consider a viable, alternative, cheap, eco-friendly form of transportation that is parallel to and separate from the automobiles that we have so much. And we know what is happening with the automobiles. Malta is a city-state. It thrives on mobility. People need to commute. Our lifestyles depend on being able to ferry ourselves and our children and our relatives here and there on a daily basis. This is not going to go away. If anything, it is going to get worse. Assuming that the population will continue to increase, and the way it's going, it seems that is the direction that we're facing, then the demands on mobility are also going to increase. And in order to prevent more logjam on our roads, then definitely the answer is not just going to be based on widening roads. That's part of the solution. It's a temporary solution anyway. It has to be based on alternative forms of transport. This is why we need to ask ourselves that if the purpose of a fixed link is to reduce distance, reduce traveling time, by how much is that traveling time going to be reduced? We may perhaps be able to work out a formula which tells us that if the tunnel is 14 kilometers long and you're traveling at 60 kilometers an hour, then it will take you 10, 15 minutes to cross that stretch. But once you're out of that stretch, particularly on the Malta side, but who knows, perhaps even on the Gozo side, you still have to connect and integrate on the main traffic network. And Imbordin is still far away from Slema, from Valletta, from Paola, from wherever you want to go in the Maltese islands. So let's think well. Let's think again about this. A bridge or a tunnel or any other fixed link has a purpose. Usually the purpose is more efficiency for individuals, for cargo, for tourists. If that is the point, then let's make sure that we do deliver on that promise. Of course, digging a hole is going to create a mass of debris. If we're going to dig an underground network around the whole archipelago, then of course that's going to deliver even more debris. We need some solid thinking about what to do with that debris. Perhaps it's time to start thinking about a new island being created somewhere off the coast of Malta. The amount of debris is going to be phenomenal, and being a small island state, whichever way we try to square this circle, it's going to meet the resistance of particular localities, particular individuals, and I don't blame them. Nobody likes having a mountain of debris on his or her front or backyard. So this is another discussion that needs to take place parallel to the mobility and connectivity discussion. Connectivity is also about the fleet. We know recently as well that various initiatives have been taken to try to remind ourselves that we are an island, we are surrounded by the sea. The sea is a medium of transport itself. The ferries between Sleman, Valletta, between Valletta and Cotonera have done wonders in removing some of the stress on our main roads, allowing individuals to reach their destinations even in shorter times and in times that can be predicted because there's no traffic. I think that the sea connection between Malta and Gozo again merits a serious discussion. With the size of the local population, with the influx of foreign workers and foreign migrants, it may be time to start thinking about a more competitive Gozo-Malta ferry service. Gozo Channel currently enjoys a monopoly on this service. If that monopoly is going to be maintained, the service will probably have to be expanded in some way. People keep mentioning the fourth ferry, people keep mentioning a ferry connection, possibly a catamaran connection to the Grand Harbour area or the Slema area. It may be time also to think about other things, such as not just expanding the fleet, refurbishing the fleet, but also expanding berthing sites in other areas along the particularly eastern coast of Malta, and consider competition. Getting close to my conclusion here, we've heard that the tunnel could be operational by 2024. By that time, at current rates, 33 new net vehicles hitting our roads. By 2024, we'll probably have 60,000 more cars. Unless things change, 60,000 more cars on our road network. And I don't think that the island is going to increase in size, so these are more cars being added to what already exists. All the more reason to think long term. I would dread to think that a tunnel would be built and by the time it is open, it has already been overtaken by events. So let's be shrewd here and smart. We have to get this right. Let's invest in a mode of transport that makes sense. And it will make sense for some time. Again, there is a bigger picture to be kept in mind here. Our island is what it is, surrounded by water. There are projections about sea level rise. The areas projected as the outlet on the Malta side for this tunnel would also coincide, as you can see from this map, with one of the areas that we are expecting to see flooded if sea level rises by even a minimum of 2 meters. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. If we're looking long term, and by long term I mean possibly 100, 200 years, the Puales Valley may be flooded with seawater, and that would of course make access to and from the tunnel a little bit more treacherous, if not dangerous. And why not add on an artistic note, Jonathan Gallia is credited with having created a graphic which represents what a underground tube system in Malta would look like. This is of course complete fantasy, this is a work of art, it's fiction, but well, there's nothing stopping fiction from becoming fact. So consider this. Finally, let's remind ourselves, this is my last slide, this is all about people. It's all about futures. What futures do we like to pass on to our children and their children? The image shows Her Excellency, the President of the Republic, with the 3 remaining residents, full-time residents of Comino. I don't think Gozo ought to end up as Comino, with being practically a depopulated island that people visit for short trips and for nature. I think Gozo deserves more than that, but at the same time, I don't think Gozo should allow itself to become another Malta. Gozo has the option of being complementary to Malta, striking for itself a distinct characteristic, a distinct brand, and at the same time maintaining lively and vibrant communities. So let's make sure that our fixed link helps to allow Gozo and Malta to achieve the destiny and the vision of their choice. Thank you.